Okay, so this is Mark Sell from the YouTube channel, Therapy for the Heart. And it's my pleasure to have here today Sera-Lys McArthur. And Sera-Lys plays the role of Karin in the play Smoke. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
And I was looking at some of your credits here. So you were on you played Christine in Where the Blood Mixes. This one on a Canadian tour. And Julia in Residential School. That was Vancouver Playhouse musical workshop. Female lead in Escape Reality, Santa Monica.
Yep, that was I was a magician's assistant essentially, but it was in a show format. So I had about 8 different characters and costume changes and tricks to learn.
Wow, that's a lot of lot to do.
Maybe even more, maybe 10.
You played as Mari.
Yep.
In Wild Blossoms.
Wide Blossoms.
Wide Blossoms. Well, that was at the Mixed Phoenix.
Yes, it was.
And the wife in Blood Wedding.
Yes, I did that in England when I was going to school.
And feature films were Hardcore Logo 2 and The Lost Angel. And currently you're playing Haley in Arctic Air in Canada.
Yes.
Yeah, good. And you're a recurring guest star, so it looks like you're going to have that.
Well, I hope I come back again.
Well, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Very good. So, Smoke is in part about identity.
Yes.
It's about rejection, identity, belonging. So, how do you see your role, and how do you see Karin's conflict in the play?
It's hard because as a person, my personal experience, I actually identify with Connie a bit more because I felt a lot of racial stress growing up because I'm mixed blood. I'm half Caucasian and half Native Canadian. So I felt pressure from both sides that I didn't belong or that I should belong to one or the other. And as far as Karin goes, what I do identify with in her is that she's very strong in her beliefs, and she's strong in her identity as a Native woman, and that has become a lot stronger for me growing up and becoming a public figure. So now I know what I stand for, and sometimes it's confusing. Sometimes I stand for, I don't know what I stand for because nobody seems to be on the same side anymore. We have a lot of this happening politically now with Idle No More and other movements within the American Indian, Canadian Indian community.
Right. So you were originally from what?
From Saskatchewan, Canada.
Canada. Oh, yeah. I think how I got all interested in Smoke was that my good friend is in Winnipeg.
Yes. And I'm from Saskatchewan, which is not too far.
Yeah, her name is Chantel, and she was. That's why I got motivated, because I wanted to learn more about the culture, and one way to learn it was to see Smoke. So that's how I got involved in seeing Smoke. I saw it on the advertised in the public theater, so I really enjoyed
thanks.
it.
Well, I'm glad you came. I'm glad you gave us a shot.
Vicky, the playwright, was just here talking about her difficulty in her life, in her own personal life, accepting the fact that she was not accepted. So I think she had similar feelings.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I feel like maybe she felt it a lot stronger than me. Like I grew up in the city, so there was still a lot of pressure. But I suppose if I would have been on a reserve or a reservation, I would have felt more pressure. Kids can be really mean.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess because I have, like I said, come to accept that I'm seen publicly as a First Nations or Indigenous person. I've just accepted that about myself and my career recently, and so I don't have as much stress as far as like, oh well, is she mixed? Is she white? Is she native? Is she part Asian? Or like, you know what I mean? Like I'm an actress. Right. I should be able to play all those things. But as a person, I know who I am and where I come from, and telling my people's story is very important to me.
Very good. Some actors, many actors pull their roles from their own personal life and their own inner conflicts. So would you say that in your role you obviously have done that? So specifically, how have you done that, if you agree with that?
I do. I guess it's not that specific though. I mean, I've had situations where, you know, I was in love with someone and their family wasn't really accepting of me at first, and so I kind of had to win them over, and it was stressful for me because they doubted my intentions. So that happens between Art and Karin in the play a lot. Mostly they're doubting Art's intentions, but also Karin's, because they're like, well, why would you want to marry him, you know? There must be something behind it. There must be something, ulterior motive. And so I definitely identify with that. And I identify with having a rival that I don't approve of their behavior. So I won't get specific on that.
Okay.
But that is similar to Karin and Connie's relationship.
Yes. So, what did you learn while working with the cast?
I learned,
if anything.
Yeah, I've learned a lot. I mean, I didn't know much about Mohawk culture before. I had gone to the midwinter ceremonies at Oneida, Wisconsin, several years ago, about 8 years ago or something. And so I know a bit about longhouse culture, but that's not the type of culture I'm from. I'm from like a nomadic band or tribe. We're Nakota, and so we have teepees. I'm also, according to my grandmother, I'm part Cree. According to some other people in my family, I'm not. But again, plains.
According to you, do you have that settled within yourself? Or
I think I am part Cree because my grandma told me that I am. And I know that there's a lot of Cree people from where I'm from, and that we were on a Cree reserve or reservation before we got our land claimed back as Nakota. So I'm sure that there's some mixing of the bloodline there, which is fine and interesting with me. But they're both prairie tribes and nomadic people. So learning about Mohawk and just basically the Six Nations and his history about the tribes over here, and also just from the acting side of things, there's such a vast array of people involved in the show. My friend Brandon Oakes, I met him in LA, and then we ran into each other in Toronto, ended up working on the same TV show in Arctic Air in Vancouver, and then I asked him to be a part of this, I told Danielle about him, and everyone's really happy to have him on board because he actually is Mohawk. And then there's Sunny. She was in the original San Francisco production of Hair, and then in the revival of Here. And
that's back in the day, huh?
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and her music is really, really great, and I've heard it before, but I didn't know who she was, and I'm just so glad that I've got to make the connections with these people.
She seems to have a wonderful personality.
Oh yeah, excellent. Yeah. She really does. She's quite the goofball. I called her that, and she was like, I haven't heard anyone call me that in so long. But I was just like, well, you are.
Yeah. It was familiar to her, huh?
Yeah.
Good. So do you feel your skills... Oh, I know somebody made an interesting statement about how fluid they liked the plays because there's a lot of collaboration, but they said also a lot of things happen each night that is different, and people might create something And I always saw the plays as being more, well, I'm thinking maybe of Broadway, maybe not, but more rigidly structured. But they said a lot of things happen and then they might spontaneously react in a way different than they had the night before with one of the characters. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I definitely do. And one of my best friend, who I'm staying with here, her name's Betsy Hillstead. She's seen the show, I think, 4 times now. And she notices lots of differences. She was like, oh, this scene was so good tonight, or I really liked doing that. And sometimes I feel like, oh, that came out differently. I don't know if that was good or bad, because I'm used to doing something essentially the same way. But yeah, it comes out differently. Like, you just feel differently towards people every night, you know? Like, you're a different person, you're in a different mood. And so, even though you're playing a character, you're bringing a lot of yourself to the role.
Do you think there's a personality to the audience, and that may make a difference in what you're going to do?
Yeah, I think so as well. That definitely plays a part in it. When I was just in Where the Blood Mixes doing that tour, and it's a very heavy piece. It's about residential schools, which I don't know if you know what they are, do you? Residential schools were a big thing in Canada. They also happened in the U.S. They were called boarding schools.
Oh yes, I thought maybe this is a specific kind of residential. I'm familiar with the residential schools, sure, and boarding schools. But maybe these are mixed.
It's for Native people.
Oh, it's for that.
And they also did a similar system in Australia, and it was colonialism. The Canadian government, by way of like the Queen of England, and the churches, the Catholic and Protestant churches, teamed up basically to take all Native children away from their homes and put them in schools that they refused to let them speak their native tongue or do any of their native customs. They had to learn Christianity, they had their hair cut, they had to speak English. They were severely punished if they broke any rules. Sometimes they were physically or sexually abused. A lot of times they were malnourished because the schools got paid by the government by how many students they had there. So they would just like shove them into these schools without enough room for them all, enough places to sleep, enough bedding, and not all of them stayed terrible forever.
Actually, that's a child abuse.
It is, and there was actually a settlement that happened a few years ago between Canada and the survivors.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's atrocious.
Wow.
And so the play that I did called Where the Blood Mixes by Kevin Loring, it'd be great if it got to come down here at some point, is about reconciliation of the survivors and because that's really, it can't be blamed for all of it, but that is why a lot of Native Canadian or Native American people have drinking problems or substance abuse problems. They have a lot of demons that they don't know how to quiet in any other way, or they don't know how to parent properly because they weren't parented properly. They were split up from their brothers and sisters. They were not allowed to go home ever, and
so they never could rejoin. I mean, at least.
So that's why a lot of the culture has been lost over the years.
We're just going to stop for 1 minute, and we're going to continue in a minute.
Sure.